Welcome to Colors Are a Crutch. I'm your host, Max Sternberg, also known as Wounded Satellite, and this is my co-host.
Yeah, I'm Max P, better known as Max P. What's going on, everybody?
Not the Florian guy anymore. We're officially transitioned.
I'm the artist formerly known as the Florian guy. I am now the Talion guy.
The Italian man.
The Italian man. Yeah. I'm the Italian man. That's right.
Italian man.
I haven't abandoned
Satellite,
but I am all in on Talion right now for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. Yeah. So how's it going? What's been going on? What are you up to?
Sitting at home, still looking for a job, still doing my thing. But been a good weekend. I had another good performance at my latest tournament that I think we're going to be talking about shortly, and we'll kind of go over some topics from there. Do you want to give the rundown for what we're doing today?
Yep. So, first up, like you said, we're going to go through the StarCity Games CEDH 5K up in Columbus. And then kind of go through some of the top 16, even though it's not listed yet. And we'll talk about the joy that is using Melee instead of Command Tower as tournament software. We'll get to that. Once we go through that, we'll talk about some of the stuff that Max went through in his rounds. So hopefully some epic battles that took place. You can walk us through it.
Yeah.
And once we're done with that, we're going to go into the brewery a little bit and talk about some of the decks that we've both been working on, and some of those decks are coming to fruition now, and we're testing them. I think there's a lot of promise, so we can get into that. So with that, I think why don't we go ahead and jump into your experience up in Columbus.
Do you want to go over the?
Yeah, let's do the top 16 first, then we'll go through.
Yeah. So Melee did not post a deck list yet. Fortunately, I was in the top 16, so I met everybody, and I was able to remember 15 of the top 16 decks. One of the guys I never played against. I didn't see his game at all, so I just have no idea what he was playing. So no disrespect to that guy. I just don't know what it is. I will not be able to give the top 16 in perfect order. I know like approximately the top decks, but I'm just going to break down the top 16 in a generalized form, out of order, and talk about some of the spicy decks and some of what I know those decks are doing. We can just go over them from there. So two of the decks were Atraxa decks. Both Atraxas made it to the top four. I was against them. One of them was the first overall seed, and one of them ended up as the fourth seed in that finals game. I can't say much about the other Atraxa deck, but the winner of the tournament overall is the Atraxa deck run by NATO, who is someone I've played against in a top 16 match before. Very talented pilot, really, really great player. Some of the spicy includes in his deck. I know that he re-added Grand Arbiter Augustine, which he had in our last top 16 battle. And I talked to him maybe a week ago, and he was off the card. And I guess my conversation with him got him back on it. So he was on it for this tournament. There were two Kinnan decks in the top 16. One was mine, which my list you can look at. It's the same list I've been running for the last few tournaments. And then the other one was Mike Sod, known for his Winota and Brea decks primarily, I think, at this point, running a Kinnan list. And he was on some pretty spicy inclusions. I know he was testing the new Agatha Soul Cauldron, which he said he really enjoyed. He was testing Chromatic Orrery, which I know Pingmeister has been on recently as an outlet. Not too much crazy stuff beyond that, but you can check out his list. I know he has posted somewhere.
I will say Mike is one of my favorite players. He did the altar that I use for my Florian deck, so I'm a big Mike Sad fan. I've had some great matches against him, so glad to see him doing well. So
yeah, I was fortunate to get to jam some games with him on Sunday, which was really, really cool because I did get to play against him in the tournament. And I think I also might be getting another Kinnan altar from him, but I do love my Ulquiorra from Modfly. Beyond that, we had Callahan from the Mind Sculptors running Tivit. I know it was his first top four performance. He was super proud, so ultimate props to him. Awesome guy to hang out with, meet over the weekend. We had Yuriko on a man who I don't know his name, running what looked like a pretty standard Yuriko list from everything I saw about it. Probably the spiciest deck from the top 16 was Ernest and whatever that red background is called that lets you sacrifice an artifact or creature and ping one. Your commander pings a damage to something. The commander Ernest, it is like a 3/3 with Death Touch that when it attacks returns a land. So it having Death Touch and with the background giving it the ability to do damage to something means you can ping down everything on the board. It functions primarily as a stacks deck from what I've seen. I've been sent the list. I've looked at the primer. It is a really, really cool deck that he's been putting up some local performances with. And awesome to see that translate to a top 16 performance at a larger tournament like it did here. I'll also just apologize for my voice right now. I'm still a little bit sick from this weekend. But this deck is running lots of combos. I know it's on some Goblin Recruiter, Conspicuous Snoop lines with Kiki Jiki is one of the ways it goes infinite. Yeah. So it goes infinite through that as well as like Dockside stuff. Really, really cool deck. Something I'm hoping more people pick up because I would love to play against it more. It seems
so. It's Gruul.
Seems really awesome.
Gruul.
Yeah, it's literally green
That's
red
wicked.
Gruul.
I like that.
Like stacks combo, a little bit of control-y aspect with the ability to just ping down the board. It's a really interesting deck.
Poor Gruul is so neglected. We need more Gruul in our format. So
well,
that makes me happy.
Like,
that makes me happy.
I'm going to Vegas with a Tali, or like what else is there? Mint Skin Boo mid range. I don't know.
Yeah, no one's playing that. Yeah.
And we had Comedian running his Sisei deck that he was just destroying people on. He was in my top 16 match that we'll get around for a bit. Another awesome guy I got to hang with over the weekend and get to know a little bit better. We had a Jessica Timna player who I was against a couple times, one in a round that we intentionally drew and just played for fun, and then he was in my top 16 match, which wasn't really much of a match when we get down to it. We had Anala, played by Bailey. I don't know his name. I forget the name of his podcast.
The name is really familiar. I think I saw
him.
Yeah,
I have it. I have a message with him, and I'll totally be able to find this in 2 seconds. Bailey. It's Nick, Bailey, and Joe on Top Deckers MTG. So that's his channel. Also, another guy, awesome dude I got to hang with over the weekend. Really talented Magic player. Super strong on the Anala list. I know he had the win in hand, and he was my other guy in my top 15 match. I just kind of ended up having the nuts there, which we'll get to. Then there was Corey, who I know is a player that plays in a lot of Mox Masters tournaments. He was on Dihada. There was one guy whose name I do not know on an Ob Nixilis build. Super cool to see. Don't know how close it was to mine. We had not Mike Sod, but a different guy on Brea, who performed super well. I got to play with him the following day as well when he was running his Brea list. We had another guy on a Marnius Calgar deck, who I got to play against in the regular tournament, not for a real match, but for an intentional draw fun game. And then there was another player on Najila.
Marnius
15
Calgar,
of the top 16.
I assume was basically like Iso Rev, trying to make infinite mana.
Esper mid-range, the usual. Infinite mana, infinite token, draw your deck, blah, blah, blah. Kind of what Marnius does best. And then a Najila deck, which, again, because deck lists aren't posted, we can't go in too much of the nitty-gritty of, they have this unusual card choice. It's just whatever I was able to see from them during the tournament. But super fun tournament. I definitely prefer in-person Magic to online Magic. Both are really fun. Both have their own cool things, but I enjoy
this. This was your first in-person CEDH tournament, right?
Yes. So I had previously been living in Costa Rica when I started getting into CEDH, which my first tournament was Mox Masters May. So all of my tournaments were these online Mox Masters and Chaos events because that was all that was available to me. I am in the job search right now, and while looking for a job, I'm staying with some friends from college in Columbus, Ohio. And after I had already decided to move in with these friends for a little bit, conveniently, I found out that SCG CON Columbus was going to be here a week and a half after I arrived. So that all just worked out coincidentally and beautifully. So I was fortunate to get to be here and get to play this weekend. It was a really great time.
Very nice. So what was your finish? You finished top 4. You did not win, though, right?
Yes, I finished second overall.
How you doing with that, buddy? How you doing? You okay?
Should we get to it when I say what happened in the finals again?
Tell us. We can talk about the details later, but just for a minute, how are you feeling? Are you good with it? Are you?
I'm frustrated. It's I'm aware I sound, which I'm not allowed to swear on this, right? We're not family friendly. Yeah, okay. I'm a little pissed. I'm a little frustrated. I know I sound like a whitey bitch when I complain about, you top 4 at another tournament. What do you possibly have to complain? Blah blah blah. But this is my 5th top 4. I've top 4'd 3 things just this month. And out of 4 weekends, I top 4'd 3 times. And I still don't have my first win, which is really frustrating. I'm a competitor. I'm not trying to complain about the performance. I'm aware and proud of the accomplishment. I'm just continuously falling short of my expectations for myself. I want to get a crown. I'm aware that consistency is more important than W's. People have told me that a lot, but I want to win. I want to win. And the most frustrating part of it is that it's not like I'm getting outplayed in these games. My last 4 straight finals, I have lost to the person going first on their 3rd turn, and all 4 of them have just been disgusting nut hands that there's nothing I can do about. Where it was Temujin on his Tivit list was the first one, where it was Land, Soul Ring, Felwar Stone, Mystic Reward, Jewel Lotus, turn 1. That's insane. Then it was Devrican Najila just going turn 1 Najila, turn 2 Ristic, turn 3 win. Great hand. Then there was Snake on his turn 3. I'm holding up Overloaded Psychrift, Kinnan Activation, Vineberg Chap Psychrift. Who's going to win through that? He had Adnaz, Dockside, Swap, Fierce Fluster. And then this time he just, he untaps on his 3rd turn. There's a player in 4th seat with a full hand of cards, a fish on board, all of his mana up. There's another Force of Will ready from the Tiva player. And he just goes Mana Crypt, Dark Writ, Demonic Tutor, Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Pact with Counterspell backup. I don't know.
Brother, let me tell you, and I've told you this offline. I don't think there's anything wrong with you being frustrated with this. I know that people are like, you should be happy with, how you did, etc. But I totally disagree with that. I mean, the fact that, you want it this bad and that you're hungry for it is why you're where you are, which is why you were able to get to these top fours. And it's that hunger that's going to drive you to continue to get there and eventually get you your win. I mean, so I think it's totally legitimate for you to be frustrated and upset and hungry for it. Don't let anyone tell you that you shouldn't feel that way, because I think it's fine. I think it's the competitive mindset that you need to succeed in this format.
I definitely need it to not affect me too much, because I have noticed with Magic, I'm just like a little frustrated with it this week, coming off of it. But yeah, I just got to get over it. Hopefully do well in Mox Masters this weekend.
And it's a variance thing. I mean, the format is just so varied. You run into so many different situations and hands and so on. Like you said, you can't control everything. You just can't. Sure. So it's like football, American football. Like, you have to get to the playoffs over and over and over again, and then it's a whole new season. And if you just keep getting there, you're going to get over the hump. You're going to get the win.
Yeah.
So just keep pushing. Don't.
I'll keep pushing. I'll keep pushing.
I'll continue to remind you. I'll taunt you and remind you that you haven't won one yet, and see if that can drive you a little bit. So.
Well, also, like, they did that. They posted the thing on Twitter of everyone posting their top 10 active CDH players, and like, if I'd won one, I feel like I would have been on every list.
Yeah, 100%.
Which would have been great, but 100%. I haven't won one yet, and I've just repeatedly top four it, so I'm on like some of the lists, which it feels good to be on some of the lists, and I really appreciate that. I'm like genuinely honored. As someone who's still, in my mind, relatively new to CDH, and I'm still learning and I'm still improving. It's really cool to be listed with those people, but I would love to get the win and really be, like a lock in that situation.
Yeah. So enough of that. Why don't you take us through some of what you ran into? Any epic games that you could talk us through?
My first two games were both really, really good. My first two games were excellent Magic games, and then I intentional drawed 3 and 4, and then my round 5 was not great. My top 16 I just nut drew, and then the finals was a non-game as well. But the first two were really hard fought wins. First round, it went Eureka on the play into Tim Najeska in second, into me on Kinnan in third, into another Kinnan deck in fourth, and that Kinnan deck was a little more stacks focused than mine. I was able to tell pretty easily, and also because I'd randomly run into the guy before he needed to submit his deck list, and so he like handed me his phone to show him how to do it. So I saw his Kinnan deck, and we like talked about a couple of his card choices, and then randomly got paired up round 1. So I knew he was a slower version, and it was a little frustrating. The one thing I like about this tournament, which I really appreciated, was compared to pretty much all my other tournaments, I feel like I've had this repeated history of drawing really bad in tournaments. Like, I need to mulligan way more than usual, and my top deck's a bit bad, and I feel like I need to really grind it out. This one, my deck felt like it was on my side, like almost all day. It felt like I was drawing really well the cards I needed, so I appreciated that for sure. So I got off to a really strong start on this one. I went like Land, Soul Ring, Talisman, Elf, turn 1 in this game, into a turn 2 Seaborn. I had 2 Basalt Tutors in hand. My first spin was a Wandering Archaic, and I had 8 mana when I was spinning, so I was in a really good situation to just like spin every turn and hold up my Flusterstorm as well. And we go through, I hit Wandering Archaic, and then I whiff on the next one, and then the last guy on his turn, Tim Najeska, before going into my turn where I'm expecting to win, he casts a Dam, and he only has 1 mana up. So I'm like, I have Wandering Archaic, and I have Flusterstorm in hand. There's no way I can lose this. I cast Flusterstorm, and the Eureka player had, I think, the one card in Magic that really fucks me up here because of the Wandering Archaic, and they didn't have the mana to pay for it. He had his own Flusterstorm.
Yep.
So my entire board gets wiped. I'm set back to nothing, which felt so bad because I was like, can't believe I'm going to lose this. A couple more turns go by. I go for because again, I had like Artifact Tutors in hand. So I go for a Tezzeret the Seeker to try and go for another win attempt. My Tezzeret gets mana drained by the other Kinnan player. I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. We go another couple turn cycles. We're interacting with each other. And then we had to interact with Tim Najeska heavily because they were going for like Brand Abolisher type win attempts. So we had to deal with that. And then it gets back to my turn again. We're like really running out of time. I have 2 Artifact Tutors in hand again. I have Trophy Mage, Fabricate, and at this point I have Mirage Mirror in hand. And so I cast the Trophy Mage. And at this point the other Kinnan deck has a counterbalance. And he flips Oko.
Oh my god!
And I'm like, get the fuck out of here! So my Trophy Mage gets countered, and at this point, I am left with exactly 6 mana, and I know that there is a 3-drop on top. And I'm looking at my hand and I'm like, do I just pass here? I can't beat the Oko. He has a fish and a Ristic though, and he's got like actually 18 cards in hand. And I'm like, I don't think this gets back to me. And I look at my hand and I'm like, okay, I have a Simic Signet. So if he draws a couple cards off of the Fish and Ristic, then the Oko's not on top. So I cast the Simic Signet, which will end up mana neutral, still have 6 mana. He draws from the Fish and Ristic, and there's a Biomancer's Familiar on top, and he has no, or I went for Fabricate. And so he had no response to the Fabricate. I get Basalt Monolith. I play Basalt Monolith. I let him draw 2 more cards off Fish and Ristic. He doesn't have the answer. It's still Biomancer's Familiar or something else on top at this point. At that point, I play Basalt, tap it for infinite colorless, play Mirage Mirror, pay for Fish and Ristic, and I know that the counterbalance can counter it, and I win the game at like the actual 90.
Holy crap!
So that was a
that never works out for me. I every time I try to do that, whatever he needs on top is what ends up on top for me every single time. That counterbalance just hoses me every single time. So
I mean, he had the card on top. He had the fucking Oko. I was like, you got to be joking.
Yeah.
And then so that was a really great game. The next round, I was against. It was, I think, me in first seat for this one, or maybe the other Kinnan player. But it was once again the Kinnan Mirror, and this was a Kinnan deck that was much closer to mine. So Kinnan Mirror as well as Talion and Prosh. So a really interesting matchup. Prosh, which it was.
What's funny? It's funny is if you go to ChatGPT and you ask ChatGPT what is the best CDH deck, it's going to tell you.
It gives you Prosh.
Yeah.
Well, so ChatGPT uses data from like 2020 back or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't use any new cards.
That's right.
It's the same thing. If you ask ChatGPT to make you a commander deck, it will only use cards printed before like 2021 or something like that because it doesn't know that any new cards exist. It only has old data. Right. But this was a really good game. The player on Talion was a very well-known level 2 judge apparently, and he gave me a lot of props after this game for my politics. He said that was like one of the better games he got to observe, even though he was playing in it. And I started this game. I legitimately started this game asking the other Kinnan player and the Prosh player. I said, "Do you understand how Talion works?" And I got one sort of, and I got one Talion. No, and fuck Talion. And I said, no problem. I understand the deck intricately. I will tell you which pieces are important and what things are relevant to interact with. And we had this really incredible grindy game where what ended up being really fortunate for me was the other Kinnan player got off to a much better start. So he was immediately the threat, and I kind of got to hide in his shadow, where his shadow was I got a Seedborn, and then he spun into Metamorph. Or something like that. So he was able to work around, and he just continuously seemed more scary, and then he had way more mana than me in Mana Rocks. I was rocking like exactly 7 mana. And so he already had all the rocks to then work with a Hullbreaker Horror that he spun into. And from that situation, I was fortunate to have a Ristic Study on board and a Mirage Mirror for the following turn cycle where he had the Hullbreaker. And we were in a position as the table where I was very honest, and I said, I do not have an answer to this, and neither of them had an answer to it. So because I had the Seaborn, I was able to untap on each of their turns, turn my Mirage Mirror into a copy of Ristic Study, and have them feed me, which was obviously very nice to get fed.
So they, oh my god, dude, that's insane. So like, hey guys, draw me some cards. And they're like, yeah, we got you.
I was very honest. I'm like, I did not have an answer, and he has a deterministic win line on the board, so we are 100% to lose to him. Is the situation, and so I believe it is correct to it is. So we are not 100% to lose to him. It works out obviously beautifully for me. And what's wild though, I was like very honest about not having answers. I'm not the kind of person who's gonna like keep telling you to feed me cards after I've like drawn several answers. That's just not who I am. I tend to play very honest Magic. But so what the Prosh player ended up doing, because I just like didn't have the answers, was he ended up casting a Finale for a Dockside to play in a Turn Witness from hand to get back Finale to then Finale for Collector Roof, so he could draw me more cards. And what was wild is I didn't draw the answer that I needed until the final draw. After he went through that entire line, the only answer I found, because at this point the Kinnan deck, the Collector Roof had him shut down on mana where he only had 2 lands. And so what he did was he Worldly Tutored and put Endurance on the top, which obviously screamed to me he has the green card in hand. So from that position, because his Kinnan was also not on the battlefield anymore, we had blown up his Kinnan with a Bowmaster, so we just had the Hullbreaker Horror, which is still, can do it by itself because he had mana vaults and stuff. But so on his turn, he plays Endurance by evoking using the Eldritch Evolution, which was the last card in hand. So I know he is Hellbent. Hullbreaker Horror trigger, he bounces the Collector Roof. I say, perfect. in response, once the Hullbreaker bounces the oof with the endurance on the stack, I turn my Mirage Mirror into a copy of Hullbreaker Horror, and then the only answer I found was I could evoke my own endurance to bounce his Hullbreaker back to his hand.
Oh my god.
Because then I had a Hullbreaker, which then meant that I didn't have a Hullbreaker or anything that was going to win on my turn. And my hand legitimately couldn't deterministically win the game with what I currently had. I had like 10 or so cards in hand, but I didn't deterministically have a win. I untap on my turn, and I top deck Basalt Monolith.
Unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable.
And I said,
unbelievable. It's just not fair, dude. It's just not fair. It's not fair.
So I literally said to them, I said, I promise on everything, I just top decked this, and I just played Basalt. And they were like, yep, you got it. And I was like, okay, GG's, guys.
Good God.
So that happened.
Good
Round
God.
3 was going to be against NATO and Corey and the guy in Agila. We just took the intentional draw. Super fine. We were like the only 2-0 people. And then 4th round, I was against Comedian, the Marnius player, and the Tim DeJessica player that ended up being my top 16 match. We took a draw, played a game for fun, where we all pulled out different decks. I played Obnixilis, Comedian played Magda, and just like had a bunch of fun. I ended up on a sweet Obnixilis line where I had the backside of Bergie going, and I had Sensei Stop. So for every mana, I could play Sensei Stop, put it on top, draw a card, discard that card to Bergie, get top and another card into exile. And so I did that a bunch of times, which kept feeding my exile zones until I hit Dockside. And then I got to do it like 8 more times. And then I eventually hit a Grape Shot and then went from there. Super sweet line.
Nice.
And that was a super fun game. And then my round 5, this was which we're going to get into how bad they set up this tournament at some point. Overall, it wasn't like atrocious, but they did a few things really, really poorly. One of the poor things was however they assembled pods was the worst I'd ever seen. I, going into round 5, was the number 4 seed overall, and I'm at 12 points, and I ended up paired against a pod that had a guy at 10, a pod that had a guy at 10, and a pod that had a guy at 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
experienced the same. I mean, I had the same problem when I played StarCity Games Baltimore. And not only did they script the pairings, but one of the things that's important about Swiss in these kind of tournaments is that you want to be playing different players each round. You do not want to see the same players over and over again through Swiss. Run into them in top 16 and top 4, yes, absolutely, but not as part of Swiss.
So that didn't happen.
Well,
that didn't happen this time.
So in Baltimore, I ran into the same people multiple times.
I heard that from several people. That was fixed for this one. No one ran into the same person multiple times.
Okay.
But I have no idea how I ended up in this game. And so, like, obviously they had to play. And I did tell them, I was like, if you guys want to take the draw here and go to 11 and help your breakers against me, like, that's an option. I'm going to offer the draw now, but if we get into the game, I'm not going to offer the draw if I'm going to win. And they said, we have to play. And I said, that's fine. So we played the game. I was 3rd seat, and I won in about 10 minutes.
Nice.
Deck just did me a solid. Super easy. So it was nice because then it meant I was undefeated going into top 16. I was 3-0-2. Annoyingly, NATO also had to play, and he was also forced into playing a different game, and he also went undefeated at 4-0-1. So I did not get to be the number 1 seed even in an undefeated run, which felt kind of shitty. Get to go to top 16 pod. It is me on the play on Kinnan, into Comedian in Sisse, into Tim Jessica guy in 3rd seat, into Bailey on Anala in 4th seat. I have to mulligan all the way to 5, which feels so bad. My deck had been doing me a solid all week. I was like all weekend. I was really disappointed that I had to mulligan low for the first time and in the most important match so far. I look at my 5 and it's a hand that just goes 2 lands, Mana Crypt, Arcane Signet, Springleaf Drum. And I was like, bet. So I keep that, and my top deck turn 1 was Seedborn Muse, and I was like, bet.
I think I heard that everyone was referring to it as the God Hand, right?
Yeah. So I go land, Mana Crypt, Arcane Signet, Kinnan, and Comedian just rolls his eyes, which I come to find out is because he kept a hand that was turn 1 Dranith or turn 1 Blind Obedience, and he was like, oh, this is the nuts here. There's no way they get around this. I just happen to have a hand disgusting enough to tell him to go, like, it's not going to work. Sorry, man. So then I get to my next turn after everyone's like eyes rolled at it, and I top deck Blue Tender. So then I go,
man.
Then I go.
All right, I don't feel bad for you anymore. I'm sorry, I don't feel bad for you anymore. Yeah, top 4 loss, dude. Come on. Lux has to run it at some point, for God's sakes.
So then I go land. land, Seedborn Muse, Bloom Tender, I think was exactly what I did there. And I pass the turn, I untap on Comedian's turn, and I had a Springleaf Drum too. I played the Springleaf Drum. I forget how the mana worked out there.
Yeah, but
because mana crypt, whatever. I had. Oh, maybe I didn't play Bloom Tender. I might have played Springleaf Drum instead. I think. Whatever I did, I did that, and then. Or did he not have Blind Obedience yet? I don't remember exactly how it went. Okay, whatever. Either way, though, I spun on Comedian's turn, and I, in response to the spin, he talks to the table, and he casts Dismember, destroying the Seedborn Muse. He was talking about doing the Kinnan or the Seedborn Muse. They decided on the Seedborn Muse, because they're like, he'll just recast Kinnan next turn. So Seedborn's dead, activation on the stack, activation resolves, it is Thrasios, and I have exactly 4 mana left. Cool stuff. So rough. I go to the end step before my turn, and remember, I'm hellbent at this point. I have 0 cards in hand. There is a Blind Obedience on the battlefield, is important. But so on end step before my turn, I pay 4 mana, activate Thrasios, I put a land on the bottom, and I reveal a Moonsilver Key. And the table just rolls their eyes. They're like, "Come on, bro!" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I didn't control this. I know this is nuts." And then I top deck for turn. My top deck was Glen Ellivere.
Unstoppable, dude. Just completely and
so I go
just like you got to feel helpless in games like that. You're just like, well,
exactly.
Doesn't matter. All my planning, all my brewing, like trying to think about what hate pieces for Kinnan, what do I do for this, how do I play it? None of that matters. All fucking out the window. Completely out the window.
So I played the Glen Ellivere, and the table literally is like, "Come on, bro." When I play the Glen Ellivere, and then I play Moonsilver Key, and I'm like, "Look, I'm not going to politic this at all. I'm aware that this was disgusting. I'm aware that this is the nuts. It's beat me if you can't. This is what I got. I have to try it." And they were like, "Yeah, of course. It's just like ridiculous." And I was like, I know it is ridiculous." Moonsilver Key sadly had to enter tap, so I had to survive a turn cycle and just like activate Thrasios a couple times on the way. Going into my following turn, they've had a lot of table talk. The weird thing that is important to note here is the Timna Jessica player was on 2 lands, and they tapped 1 land to just play Sensei Stop Tapped. We will talk about what it was in his hand afterwards, and part of why this game is so unsatisfying for me. Going into my last turn, I just untap. I crack Moonsilver Key for Basalt Monolith, crack Basalt Monolith. In response, Bailey casts a Pack Negation. I counter with Glen Ellivere. He then plays a Dress Down, and I say, that's fine. I go to my end step, untap Assault Monolith, produce Infinite Colorless Mana, and I have Thrasios already, so that I'm able to say, I'm now going to take everything except for Emergent Zone until I find Crop Rotation, and then I will crop right into Emergent Zone, and then I will present a loop where I put every creature into play, bounce every permanent you guys control. I will make infinite creatures, and I will hold up infinite counter magic. GG.
Yes.
Now, the reason I pointed out the Timna Jessica player playing the Sensei Stop is because if he did not do that, he would have had 2 mana, and he did have a Soul Partition in hand. So with 2 pieces of interaction, they would have been able to get through. Especially because Comedian played a Drannith Magistrate on his previous turn, so if he had Soul Partition one of the pieces, then I would not have been able to win. So
misplays are part of the game, man.
Misplays are part of the game. But I don't know. There is something to be said, and I said this after the game. And again, I'm absolutely not complaining. It is a level of nice to feel the deck just like reward me for once with a nutty draw, because all of my previous top 16s have been like insane grind fest. If you look at them, they're all like 2-hour games that I've had to really find the line. But the thing about it is when I'm in these 2-hour games where I have to grind it out and politic and find the line, those wins have a lot of personal satisfaction to them. And I take a lot of pride in those as a player, because I think I've really showed my stuff and who I am. And winning on just like an absolute nut draw where another guy punted, like, cool, I'm happy I got the top 4, but it doesn't have that same level of interpersonal satisfaction that I enjoy.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
So what happened in top 4?
Top 4! I believe I already complained about losing to the person on the play in turn 3. But yeah, it was... I kept a questionable 7. I think it was good enough. I mean, if you look at my previous tournaments, like especially the last one against Snake, I kept a hand that was just a great ramp hand, but was mainly looking to interact and stop other people, because I didn't want to lose to the person on the play in their 3rd turn. So this hand I kept I'm going to fucking win hand. And my hand was going to win on my 3rd turn. So I did that.
Turn Order Simulator. You were in the wrong seat.
Turn Order Simulator. Yeah. Who cares if you're undefeated? You're not the first seat. But so, yeah, I mean, I kept the hands. I went like turn 1, whatever I did, turn 2, Moon Silver Key. I actually wouldn't have been able to win on my turn 3 because Tivit player Callahan in third seat played a Blind Obedience on his second turn, so I wouldn't have actually been able to win. But if he had not played a Blind Obedience, what I was like planning on my turn, I would have been able to untap, get Basalt to win. But then Atraxa player on his third turn, went like, I don't know if he already had the Mana Crypt, or I think, he already had the Mana Crypt, so he went like Dark Writ into Tutor, into Thassa's, into Tainted Pact with Force backup, and, was able to just win the game through a fish and Tivit having interaction and the other guy with the fish having all his open mana, which is a little frustrating. Yeah. I would have been able to hold up a Flusterstorm for him, theoretically. Like, that was absolutely something I could have done, but if I had done that, I completely sacrificed my ability to go for win on my third turn, and I'm literally just pretty much time walking myself just to hold up the Flusterstorm with the way my mana worked out, which didn't seem ideal. So I chose to survive one more turn, especially because if you look at the board and the situation of the table, first seed Atraxa and fourth seed Atraxa both had fish. They both had mana to hold for each other. There was just no indication that someone was going to be able to push out a win right there. It seemed super, super unlikely. So pretty disappointing that it was just no one had anything for him and he was able to do it.
It happens though. I mean, that's the way it goes. So, congrats anyway. Sounds like you played your ass off. Variance.
It's been a good month. Yeah, it's been a good month. It's been a good run. Just got to keep competing, keep showing my stuff, doing what I can.
Okay, so now that we've talked about what happened in the tournament and how all that went down, let's break down a little bit of the SCG CON tournament structure. Just for a little bit of comparison, do you want to tell us a little bit about what it was like in Baltimore?
Yeah, and I will, and I won't mince words. I'm just going to be straight up about it. Baltimore was a bit of a shit show. They had a really hard time with the Melee software. Right from the beginning. So, for example, we couldn't load partner decklist into the software, so it had to be manually written down. So we had pieces of paper with decklists being handed out. And the pairings were terrible. We had pods where we had 2 players instead of 4. We had one round where there were, I think, two three pods and 2 pods. And lots of people being DQ'd left and right because of proxies. So it was a complete disaster of a tournament, quite frankly. But I mean, at the end of it, they did solicit feedback and promise to try to improve it. So with that said, did they?
Which one thing I will say, they also solicited feedback quite heavily here, and they very clearly cared about the opinions that they said, which I told them immediately, this is my first in-person tournament, and so my opinions might not hold the same weight, and they were immediately like, no, we want to hear your opinion as well, because this is your first tournament. Like, they were very, very interested in feedback and improvement, so I will give them that. That's at least how it came across to me. Going over a few different points you made, we did not have to do any in-paper deck lists. I think the way they handled the partner thing this time, because same situation, you could not load partners on the Melee. They just had to have one of the partners in the 99, and that was fine.
Okay, that makes sense.
For pairings, the pairings were still terrible. Which I think I mentioned at some point earlier that, like, my last pod I was against a guy with 6 points, and there was a lot of that where where they paired people should not have been the pods they were playing in. And what we told them early on was, like, me and Comedian were talking to head judge Seth about this when the round started, because we had just intentionally drawn the round before, and we happened to be in tables next to each other. We were like, we are less incentivized to take these intentional draws if we know we are going to be forced to play again in the later rounds. Like, we did that with the understanding that we would just be able to draw in. And so it changes your mindset of, I might want to play these earlier rounds if I'm not going to be able to just draw in on the later rounds. So we definitely told them that. And I mean, just like the way however they did it was terrible. They did, there definitely were pods that, like, at the start of the round, there would be like a couple 3 pods. I don't know if there were some 2 pods. I never got forced in one of those situations, so I wasn't really close to it. But I do know in the first, like, 5 to 10 minutes, they did move around a couple people sometimes, be like, hey, you're going to go to this pod, you're going to go to this pod. So they tried to fix those situations, and they definitely waited, they said, we will never have a 2 pod anymore. We will have 5 3 pods if we have to make it work. You know what I mean?
Okay. The other thing I forgot to mention, and actually I think it's worth mentioning again, is when they started in Baltimore, they had the players meeting, and someone got up on the loudspeaker or whatever and announced to everyone, hey, we know that some of you are used to the unspoken rules of CEDH, where there's no spike plays and king making. Well, I'm here to tell you that spike plays and king making are completely allowed and perfectly acceptable.
Which is so stupid.
Which was so awful. Yeah. Really set the tone for the whole tournament. I don't know. Did they do that? Okay, good.
They did not say that. What they did say, which I really liked a few things that they clarified, because I know I immediately had questions about like scooping at instant speed, because I've heard horror stories from in-person events about like, oh, I'm playing a Malcolm deck that's trying to win with Glinthorn, and one of my opponents just scoops at instant speed to make the game go to a draw. Their ruling was, they said, obviously we cannot force you to physically sit here. If you want to take all your cards and leave, that's your prerogative. But the game will continue as if all of your permanents are on the battlefield until it gets back to your turn.
Okay. And they started doing
like,
that same thing at Eminence events, where they basically said, you can get up, you can go for a walk. A judge will come and sit here and take all game actions on your behalf.
So like obviously you can't counter something, but like the fact that, oh, your Grafdigger's Cage is still there, or the fact that you were there as a player for like a Tibbet or a Malcolm thing still exists.
Got it.
Which is I think very important. And I don't play any of the decks that are affected negatively by scooping an instant speed, but like 100%, you should not be able to do that. So I'm all for it.
Yeah,
I do understand situations of if you are able to actually kill yourself for the draw, it's not the best thing to do, but it is fair play. Like if you have a Necropotence out and you want to pay life to 0, that's your prerogative. I know that one time, we were 40 minutes overtime and I had a Consphinx out, and I said yes to a Rhystic Study to draw 2 with my Consphinx, which killed myself, which fizzled a burn spell that was going to go infinite Searing Touch with Fadric. And I think that is allowed. Like that's okay.
That makes sense.
It's not
I mean,
my favorite
when
thing.
you're playing for a draw, there's a lot of things you could do playing for a draw that you wouldn't do normally.
Right, which the way I mentally sold myself on doing that was my upkeep would not have gone the way it went if those people were not playing for the draw to stop me.
Yeah, that's fair.
And those people,
I've sacked Dothy and cast a Pact of Negation that I couldn't pay for to force a draw.
Right, which I think like trying to force a draw in those scenarios is fine. It just can't be from literally scooping and like disappearing from existence in instant speed in a way that's not within the game rules.
Right, so I can't flip the table and walk away, is what you're saying.
Exactly. You can't just say, I no longer exist, I scoop. You have to be like, I can murder myself. And if you can murder yourself, feel free.
Yeah.
Feel free.
Yeah, makes sense.
What is it? Seppuku? Is that how it's pronounced? Seppuku?
Yeah, stab yourself.
Seppuku.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but otherwise, you said it was a pretty good tournament. Things went well. Otherwise, it was 5 rounds instead of 4, which I think is much better.
I do need to complain about the round times. Did you guys have turns in Baltimore?
Yeah, we did 75 minutes in turns.
Yeah, we did that as well, and it was pretty fucking miserable.
Yeah, of course.
So just to give you an idea, my first round, like I said, it was a grind game. I put like 4 different win attempts on the board, and I won with 5 minutes left on the clock. I didn't start my next round for almost 2 hours later.
We learned that lesson. I mean, so like if you kind of look back through CEDH history and like tournament history, there was only really big tournaments like last year. Is when it really started to pick up, or maybe 2021 I think was like the first real tournaments. Like what was it, Tier 1 Con I think was in 2021, and that was kind of the beginning of it. And I think people learned pretty quickly in those first couple of big tournaments that turns is just not good.
No turns.
When I played at Oko November last year, that was the last tournament I played in other than SCG that actually had turns, because it just gets stupid because every turn could take an hour by itself.
Which the thing you have to remember is when you get to this stage in the game, especially games that are going to a draw based on time, those are games that already have complicated board states where everything is taking a while. That's why the game went to time. So when you add in an additional 3 turns of a game already at a draw, it takes a long time. It takes a long time. If someone was able to close out the game, it would have probably happened already. And yes, some of those games end in draws, and some of those games do end in someone winning. And great for the people who get to pull out the win there, but it takes an extra hour. And it's like, it's ridiculous.
It does things like it draws the tournament out to the point where for some people it's just not viable anymore. You have to leave. You have to do other things. You can't give up. It's already hard to give up 2 full days to a tournament.
Right.
When it starts to be like 14-hour days twice in a row, it's just too much. It was
a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I mean, like the finals started at like 9 p.m. after the tournament started at 9.
God.
It was because it was 6 rounds, and every round took 2 hours because it's a 75-minute clock. and then there's at least 30 minutes for turns, and then there's a break in between.
Right.
Like the shortest was 30 minutes for turns. You know what I mean? It was pretty crazy. I was not a fan of the turns, and I think everyone echoed that to them. So hopefully they continue to take feedback and make adjustments.
Yeah, well, it definitely sounds like it's already improved some, so hopefully it just continues to improve. And it would be a very good thing for everybody if StarCity Games could consistently put up CDH tournaments that we can go to. That would be great. The more the better. The tournaments seem like they're improving, so that's a good thing. So, with that, I think we could segue into Talion and
Talion.
Ellivere. Yeah. So this week, we'll put this in the description below. But Comedian actually came out with a pretty cool deck tech video going over Talion. He actually used the list that you and I have been collaborating on as the basis for that video, which is pretty damn cool.
Super cool. Super cool.
Yeah, and I am definitely picking up that deck as my main deck right now. So I've been trying to get in as many reps with it as I can. I think it has huge potential, and I'm already really enjoying it. But that's not the only deck that's being brewed right now. What's the other one?
I'm working on Ellivere. I don't actually know her name in full. Is it Ellivere of the Wild Court? I want to say. I just call her Ellivere.
Ellivere of the Misery.
Ellivere of the Stack Space Misery. No, that one's super cool. Shout out to my buddy Rooney. He randomly hit me up, which Rooney is a turbo player, like a turbo combo player. The deck I originally first met him on, he was running Cole, the dwarf equipment combo guy. Super cool deck, which he's back on that deck after taking a long break from it and having like the most fun I've ever seen him play Magic, which has been really fun to see. But then he went to Dihada for a while, and he was like, I guess I should do something different. And he was looking at decks, and he hit me up and he was like, what do you think of this one? And asked me to brew it with him. My initial interpretation, I was like, this is just a bad green-white stacks commander. Like, who cares? And then we brewed it, and we started goldfishing it, and the deck is disgusting. Like, absolutely so much better than I ever thought it would possibly be. It's very comparable to Winota, but the difference within a Winota is that it draws a lot of cards.
Yeah, it has inherent card advantage, which is huge.
It has a lot of card advantage, and it also has the thing where Winota is playing effects like Rick, or like, I don't know, whatever they're on. Some people are on the like double damage human or Blade Historian.
Right.
You don't need that with Ellivere. You just need Ellivere because all these rolls. So what she does, just to, I guess, say what Ellivere does, when she enters the battlefield or attacks, you put a virtuous roll token, enchantment, or a thing on another creature you control. So you can't put one on Ellivere herself. And the virtuous roll is all like glitter stacks. It gives your the creature +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Each enchantment. So they get fucking huge. Like, absolutely enormous, really, really quickly. We were on a little bit more of an Enchantress plan in the original build, which we've now moved off of, so they're not as like, I'm a 10/10 on turn 3 anymore, but they're still like very large. You end up swinging with these like 5 to 10 power creatures, and then we have some effects in it. Like right now, I think we're testing Archon of the Wild Rose, which makes every enchanted creature you control a 4/4 as base toughness. We're pushing through the damage with stuff like Kadama of the West Tree, which also I'm on a few extra basics now because every time they do damage, a modified creature does damage, you get to search out a basic. And one of the craziest things about this deck is how much mana it makes, because since you are on all of these enchantment roll tokens and you're this like creature focused deck, we are on lots of effects to get out both Gaia's Cradle and Sarah's Sanctum. So this deck is making a stupid amount of mana. It's playing really, really hard stacks that lock your opponents out of the game, and it's not just win conless stacks. It has a ridiculously fast beatdown clock.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of it's like Winota and Jetmir got together and had a baby. That's what it feels like.
Honestly, kind of. Yeah, it's wild. It's super fun. I'm a huge.
I've played against it a bunch of times now because Zen. I'm sure everyone at this point should know who Zen is. He's the guy who back-to-back Moxmaster champion on the worst deck in history of CDH, Talion.
Yeah.
But
shocker that he likes Ellivere.
But he likes to make people miserable and suffer. So of course he's an Ellivere. But that deck is no joke. Absolutely no joke. Gets so big so fast, and you can't do anything. You just can't do anything about it. So like you just sit there and get beat on. It makes cards like Toxic Deluge feel bad.
Yes.
I'll pay 25 into it. Yeah.
And I know not everyone is on this. This is like some tech that's being tested to see if it's worth it. But my build is currently running Last March of the Ents, the card from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, he was playing too.
Uncounterable 8-mana spell that draws cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control and puts any number of creatures from your hand onto the battlefield. The one time I've resolved this spell, it was on like turn 4 where I had a Sarah sending out. And so I drew 10 cards and put 8 stacks creatures onto the battlefield.
Damn.
Yeah. And I was just like, this is a little wild.
That's broken.
This is wild. Deck is better than it should be. It's just what I will say about it.
I need a second Cycrypt in every deck right now. That's what I need.
Well, get ready for my Archon of Valor's Reach and Sanctum Prelate to tell you to get fucked, baby.
Yeah, that happened. That actually happened.
Yeah, it does. It does. I do know a couple people are going to actually be running this in Mox Masters. This will be out after Mox Masters is out, so that will have already happened. And I don't know how they did. Hopefully not well against me, but hopefully they mess up everyone else.
Yeah, I wish I could play. I wish I could, but I'm doing a fantasy draft this weekend, so I cannot play in Mox Masters. So sad.
Dude, I've had to do too many fantasy drafts.
I tried to talk them out of it. I'm like, look, I have a really important thing to do this weekend. They're like, what? I'm like,
play Magic the Gathering.
Took too long to answer. Sorry. Yeah,
it's not gonna happen. But the deck is super cool. I also, it's 2 colors, so it's my baby. Which now my decks that I have in paper at this point, now that I have Talion put together, I have Kinnan, Obnixilis, Talion, and technically I have a Winota build that I just never play, all 2 colors, and I'm going to put together Ellivere. So nice. I have a style, apparently.
Yeah, we're the 2-color guys. That's what we do. Because colors are a crutch. It is.
Colors are a crutch.
Yeah. Although we are going to bring on someone who likes colors soon.
We're both about to do that same transition there, my guy. We're going to say the same thing at the same time. I was about to say it. Yeah, we're going to have our first guest next week.
Yeah.
And it is someone who is known for playing decks that are definitely more than 2 colors.
Yes, he's a color lover. And
he's a color lover.
Yeah. So we're going to allow him on, and he's gonna school us a bit, I'm sure. But
we are honored to have him
you guys
on.
should be very excited. It's going to be he's a hell of a guest to bring on. It's going to be. I'm excited to talk to him. It's going to be a good time. So we'll next week's going to be a good episode because we're gonna have him on. We're going to talk about some interesting topics. We're probably going to go over top 16 from Mox Masters. Maybe you'll actually win one. What do you think? Is it possible?
Maybe. It's so, dude, like I already have people messaging me saying, this Saturday is your tournament, bro. And I'm like, come on, like I don't fucking, can't just like say that right away. I don't know. Let's do it. No, sorry. Let me take 2. Yeah, this is it. We got this. Fuck yeah, kill them all.
If you fail, you will let me down, son. Do not let me down.
Daddy Satellite. Come on.
But yeah, it's gonna be a good time. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't think we have anything else to talk about today. Do you? I think we covered it all. So once again, thanks for joining us today. If you like this content, had a good time, do the whole like and subscribe thing. We are
Colors Are a Crutch. I am co-host Max Sternberg, also known as Wounded Satellite.
And I am Max P, better known as the new Talion guy.
The Talion man.
Yeah, and actually, one other thing before we cut this off is we do have a new Talion Discord server, so we will include the link to that as well in the description below.